You being nice doesn't protect you from betrayal. It invites it when misdirected. It's one of the hardest pills to swallow for people who lead with heart, who give with open hands, and who walk into every room believing the best in others. But here's the truth that most people don't want to admit. Predators love kindness, not because they respect it, but because they know how to weaponize it. Niceness, when not guarded by discernment, becomes the easiest access point for emotional sabotage. It starts subtly. You give someone a second chance because you believe in grace. You stay quiet when something crosses a line because you don't want to start drama. You pick up their calls even when your gut tells you not to. And little by little, they learn your rhythm. They memorize your triggers. They figure out that you're more afraid of being labeled unkind than you are of being disrespected. And that's when the manipulation begins. Not with fireworks, but with familiarity. They'll tell you that you're too sensitive or overthinking things anytime you call out discomfort. They'll lean on the shared past to keep you from walking away in the present. But we're family. But we've been through so much. But I love you. They use love as leverage, and weaponize your integrity. And while you're busy trying to be a good person, they're busy tightening the leash around your loyalty. You see, there's a cost to being nice without being wise. There's a difference between kindness and people-pleasing, and most people never learn that line until it's been crossed too many times. Betrayal rarely comes from strangers. It comes from those who know exactly where your armor is thin. It comes from people you've broken bread with, from those you've defended in rooms they'd never stand up for you in. It comes from the friend you never thought would lie, the sibling you always protected, the partner you believed was healing. And the deepest betrayals, they don't feel like attacks. They feel like confusion, like gaslighting, like maybe I'm the problem. When you're wired to see the best in people, you ignore the red flags because you're too busy searching for the good. And here's the kicker, they know that. The wrong people study you, not because they admire you, but because they want to know how to mold your trust into a cage. And every time you choose silence over confrontation, every time you forgive without requiring change, you reinforce the idea that they can do it again. You people who are committed to your growth won't weaponize your kindness. They won't guilt you for creating boundaries. They won't need you to prove your love through constant self-betrayal. But demons, yes, demons, because not every enemy wears a uniform, will cling to your goodness like parasites. They don't want you to stop being nice. They want you to be nice at the expense of your own clarity, because the more confused you are, the more control they have. You can't afford to lead with kindness if your radar isn't sharp. You're just like a fighter pilot in enemy territory can't assume every aircraft is friendly. You can't assume every smile is safe. Trust is earned. Loyalty is verified. Respect is mutual. Being kind doesn't mean being available. It doesn't mean tolerating disrespect. It doesn't mean lowering your standards so that no one feels uncomfortable around your truth. It means having the courage to say no even when your voice shakes. It means walking away even when you love them. It means choosing peace over performance. Some of the most dangerous people in your life will be the ones who clap the loudest in public and plant seeds of doubt in private. They'll pretend to support your dreams while subtly reminding you of all the ways you could fail. They'll mask jealousy as concern. They'll advise you to stay grounded when what they really mean is stay small. And if you let them, they will shape your identity around their insecurities. Not because you're weak, but because you're nice, because you didn't want to offend, because you wanted to keep the peace. But peace is not the absence of conflict. It's the presence of clarity. And clarity begins where false loyalty ends. Demons don't come with horns. They come disguised as history, humor, or help. The most dangerous people in your life won't always be the ones screaming at you or threatening you. Often they're the ones you've shared the most with, the ones who know your past, who understand your vulnerabilities, who joke with you in a way that feels familiar, disarming even. That's how they get in. That's how they stay undetected, because they don't show up in obvious ways. They show up in old stories inside your comfort zones, wearing the mask of someone who knows you better than anyone. When a person knows your history, they don't have to guess how to hurt you. They already know. They've seen you at your lowest. They were there during your storm. And at first, that feels like connection. It feels like trust. you. But not everyone who walks with you through the valley intends to see you rise. Some stay close because your brokenness gave them purpose, because your struggle made them feel needed, because your pain kept you reachable, controllable, familiar. And when you begin to grow, when you begin to heal and pull away, they panic. They don't say it outright, but it leaks out in backhanded compliments, sarcastic jabs, constant reminders of who you used to be, you. They're not trying to support your transformation. They're trying to sabotage it under the guise of remember when. Then there's humor, the kind that stings you, the kind that crosses the line but gets dismissed as just joking. Demons love humor because it's the perfect tool for plausible deniability. It allows them to throw a punch, then laugh and say, "You're too sensitive." They'll ridicule your dreams, your habits, your growth, but all while smiling. They make your evolution a punchline, especially in front of others, because they're testing how much of yourself you're willing to betray just to keep their approval. And if you protest, you're overreacting. It's a tactic, They want you to question your own limits, to dull your edges, to quiet your spirit, all under the cover of laughter. And then there's help. Perhaps the most manipulative disguise of all, Demons offer help not out of love, but for leverage. Their help comes with invisible strings, conditions, and unspoken debts. They'll do you a favor, and then hold it over your head when you try to draw a boundary. They'll remind you what they did for you. The moment you start to reclaim your power, their help was never help. It was a seed planted for future guilt. And if you're someone who leads with loyalty and gratitude, that seed will grow into an obligation. An obligation that slowly strangles your ability to say no. These people don't need to shout to be dangerous. They don't need to control you with force when they can do it with familiarity. The bond you share becomes the very weapon they use. You hesitate to confront them because of the years you've known them. You ignore your intuition because you've laughed together. You stay silent because they helped you once when no one else did. And slowly you start to question yourself. You begin to believe that maybe you're the problem, That maybe setting a boundary is being ungrateful. That maybe protecting your peace is betrayal. But here's what's really happening is you're being manipulated through emotional history, You're being contained by people who don't want to lose the version of you that made them comfortable. These demons don't want you dead. They want you stuck in the narrative that serves them. Stuck in relationships that drain you, stuck in patterns that look like loyalty but feel like slow decay. Because as long as you don't rise, they don't have to confront their own mediocrity. As long as you keep laughing it off, forgiving without change, and accepting help with strings, they stay in control. They keep their access. They keep the upper hand. And you keep shrinking in the name of peace that isn't even real. Watch patterns, not apologies. Demons repeat, angels repair. One of the most blinding mistakes people make in relationships, whether with friends, family, or even themselves, is confusing words with change. We've been taught to accept apologies as proof of sincerity, to believe that someone saying, "I'm sorry," means they're ready to do better. But that's not how reality works. Anyone can say they're sorry. Anyone can express regret in the heat of the moment, especially when they're caught, cornered, or afraid of losing access. But apologies without changed behavior are nothing more than emotional bandages over a wound that's meant to keep bleeding. A demon doesn't look dangerous at first. In fact, their strength lies in their ability to appear remorseful, to mimic the language of accountability while never intending to change a thing. They don't come back with clarity, they come back with tactics. A tear here, a soft voice there, a reminder of better times, a guilt trip that makes you question your own reaction. And if you're someone who sees the best in people, you'll fall for it. You'll see that apology as hope. You'll take it as a sign of progress, as a chance to reset. You'll believe that maybe just maybe this time it'll be different, but it won't. Because demons don't learn, they loop. They don't reflect, they reset the cycle. Their apologies are rehearsed, Their regret is performative, and their ultimate goal is to get back into your good graces without doing the work to deserve it. They bank on your empathy. They rely on your capacity to forgive you. And they count on the fact that you've been conditioned to accept words as replacements for accountability. So they mess up, they say sorry, and then they do it again. Maybe not the same way, maybe not right away, but it always returns. The disrespect, the gaslighting, the manipulation, the betrayal, it comes back, often with a new mask, but the same intent. Patterns don't lie. Behavior reveals what words try to hide. A person can promise you peace and still deliver chaos. They can swear they've changed while operating from the exact same dysfunction. They can cry and beg and confess their pain and still walk away unchanged. That's because healing isn't found in emotion, it's found in consistency. Angels repair you. They take responsibility without needing to be caught. They change without needing to be begged. They notice the harm they've caused, and they take active steps to ensure it doesn't happen again. Not for applause, not for access, but because it grieves them to have hurt you, because they're committed to being better, not just appearing better. An angel doesn't just say they're sorry, they restructure the way they show up in your life. They rebuild trust one choice at a time. They walk a new path even when no one is watching. And most importantly, they don't weaponize your forgiveness. They don't make you feel guilty for needing space. They don't rush your healing process. They don't expect to be embraced just because they've acknowledged the wound. Angels repair by actions, not excuses. By presence, not performance. But a demon will look you in the eye, apologize, and then place you in the exact same situation again and again until you no longer recognize yourself. They'll train you to lower your expectations, to believe that all relationships come with cycles of pain, that your standards are too high, that if you leave, you're giving up too soon. They don't want healing. They want history. They want you to stay tied to the past, to overlook the pattern, to invest more energy in fixing what they refuse to change. And the longer you stay, the more you confuse familiarity with love, apology with growth, and chaos with passion. Growth requires brutal honesty. It demands that you stop giving unlimited chances to people who only change their approach, not their intention. It requires you to ask yourself not what someone says, but what they've shown. What is the evidence? What has their track record taught you? When someone shows you who they are repeatedly, you believe them not because you're bitter, but because your peace is worth protecting. Because every time you ignore a pattern, you give that pattern permission to continue. And over time, you begin to lose your sense of what's acceptable. You begin to normalize emotional whiplash. You begin to see dysfunction as devotion. If someone feels threatened by your growth, they're not your wingman. A true wingman isn't intimidated by your progress. They're inspired by it. They don't measure your success against their own insecurities. They push you higher, not hold you back. In life, much like in combat, you need someone flying beside you who wants you to win as much as they want their own victory. But the harsh truth is, not everyone who starts with you is meant to stay with you. And one of the clearest signs you've outgrown someone is when your evolution begins to make them uncomfortable. Growth is a mirror. When you begin to shift, to elevate, to chase something greater. It reflects everything in the people around you that remains stagnant. And not everyone is ready to face that reflection. You stop complaining about the same old problems. You start setting boundaries. You quit engaging in low-level conversations. You invest your energy in self-discipline, vision, purpose. And suddenly, the people who once felt close to you now seem irritated by your mindset. They'll say you've changed, but not as a compliment. They'll mock your new habits, downplay your goals, or bring up the old version of you every chance they get. Not because they're curious, because they're threatened, because your growth demands that they look at their own complacency. A wingman lifts. A wingman challenges you, covers your blind spots with you. Speaks truth when you can't see clearly. They don't compete with you, they collaborate. They want the best for you, not just when it benefits them, but even when it means you might fly further or faster than they do. That's love without ego. That's partnership without envy. But when someone begins to act distant, critical, or dismissive every time you level up, you're not in a bond, you're in a battle disguised as a friendship. Their problem isn't that you're doing too much. Their problem is that your growth is making their excuses louder in their own head. People who feel threatened by your growth will often try to mask their discomfort as concern. They'll say things like, just don't forget where you came from, or don't get too ahead of yourself. But those aren't warnings, they're subtle jabs. They're trying to keep you tied to a version of yourself that no longer fits. They don't want to lose access, not because they love you, but because they fear being left behind you. And instead of growing with you, they try to stunt you. They question your motives, cast doubt on your journey, or act like you owe them explanations for evolving you. The most dangerous form of opposition is the one that comes dressed as loyalty. It's the friend who never cheers when you win. The sibling who always has something negative to say. The partner who downplays your dreams because they feel small next to them. The colleague who celebrates your progress in public but gossips about you in private. These people aren't just unsupportive. They're silently sabotaging your climb, not with daggers, but with doubts, not with confrontation, but with emotional distance, passive aggression, and sarcasm that cuts deeper than any direct insult. Growth is uncomfortable, not just for you, but for those who've built a relationship with the version of you that's settled. When you rise, you naturally create space between yourself and people who are still living in cycles you've outgrown. And that space either inspires them to grow too or exposes their unwillingness to change. A wingman doesn't flinch when you fly higher. They tighten formation, match your energy, and adjust their altitude. They're proud of your progress because they see your win as a shared victory with you. But someone who feels threatened by your growth will always try to convince you that staying small is noble, that playing it safe is wise, that wanting more is selfish. The truth is you. You don't need to apologize for outgrowing relationships that were never built to withstand your evolution. You don't need to shrink to stay palatable. You don't need to dim your light so others don't feel overshadowed. If your growth offends someone, it says more about their fear than your future. And if they can't celebrate your wins, they were never really on your side. Emotional sabotage often hides behind smiles and good intentions. It doesn't always look like conflict. It doesn't always feel like manipulation. In fact, it usually shows up with warmth, with kindness, with the kind of familiarity that makes you lower your guard. It comes from people who say the right things but move with the wrong motives. From those who frame their control as care, their criticism as concern, and their jealousy as just being protective. And the most dangerous part, you rarely recognize it in the moment because it doesn't sound like attack. It sounds like love. It sounds like support. It sounds like someone who just wants what's best for you. But here's the truth, not all good intentions are pure. Some are wrapped in insecurity. Some are built on the need to control. Some are disguised as help but engineered to keep you dependent, small, uncertain. Emotional sabotage isn't always loud. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it laughs. Sometimes it hugs you while holding a leash you didn't even know was wrapped around your potential. And when it comes from people you trust, it becomes even harder to see clearly. You want to believe them. You want to honor the relationship. So you justify it. You tell yourself they didn't mean it that way, or they're just worried about me. But meanwhile, your self-belief is slowly being chipped away. It starts with subtle remarks that question your vision. When you share your dreams, they pause a little too long before responding. They say things like, that's great, but are you sure it's realistic? Or, I just don't want to see you get hurt. It sounds like wisdom, but it's actually fear. Often their own, not yours. They're projecting limitations onto you while dressing it up as love. And if you're not paying attention, you'll start to internalize their doubts. You'll start second guessing yourself, not because you lack clarity, but because you've allowed someone else's comfort zone to define your ceiling. Then it shows up in the form of guilt. You start making decisions that serve your future, and they respond with emotional withdrawal. They remind you of everything they've done for you. They make you feel like your growth is a betrayal, like choosing yourself means abandoning them. They won't say it outright, but their silence, their coldness, their passive aggression, all of it sends one loud message: you're wrong for changing. And instead of focusing on your progress, you find yourself trying to manage their emotions. You make yourself smaller so they don't feel left out. You delay your success to maintain peace. You start sacrificing your goals at the altar of their approval. Emotional sabotage also thrives in inconsistency. They support you one day and distance themselves the next. They praise you in public and question you in private. They create emotional whiplash that keeps you unsure, keeps you performing for their validation, keeps you in a constant state of trying to earn their love. And because their sabotage is wrapped in kindness, it's hard to call out. You feel petty for noticing. You feel ungrateful for speaking up. You question your own judgment, not realizing that their mixed signals are the very strategy that keeps you tied to them. They'll celebrate your wins, but only to a point. As long as your progress doesn't outshine them, as long as it doesn't require them to grow too. The moment your light threatens their comfort, they'll retreat, criticize you, or pull you back with subtle emotional hooks. They'll remind you of how things used to be. They'll bring up old memories that make you question whether you're doing too much. They'll laugh at your new habits, make fun of your routines, all under the mask of just messing with you. But the message is clear. You don't change too much, not because they don't care about you, but because your evolution makes their stagnation harder to ignore. Emotional sabotage wrapped in good intentions is still sabotage. You. Just because someone smiles when they say it doesn't mean it's harmless. Just because someone claims to love you doesn't mean their actions are rooted in your growth. And just because someone has a history with you doesn't mean they're equipped to support your future. Often, the people who say they're protecting you are actually protecting their own fears. They're not trying to stop you from failing. They're trying to stop you from outgrowing the version of yourself that made them feel safe. Their guilt trips are not your mission orders. Just because someone feels disappointed, left out, or uncomfortable with your choices doesn't mean you owe them compliance. Guilt is a weapon often disguised as love. And many people, especially those closest to you, know exactly how to wield it. They don't raise their voice. They don't demand obedience. Instead, with you, they inject just enough doubt into your mind to make you question your own direction. They create emotional tension, not by being direct, but by making you feel responsible for their discomfort. And if you're someone wired for loyalty, someone who leads with heart and integrity, that tension can feel like obligation. It starts small. A subtle sigh when you say no. A long pause when you share a plan they're not part of. A few pointed comments about how things used to be. Suddenly, you're not just making decisions for yourself. You're calculating how each move might trigger someone else's feelings. They say things like, I guess I'm just not that important anymore. Or must be nice to have time for everything but me. They don't tell you what to do. They just drop emotional landmines, hoping you'll navigate back toward them out of guilt, not intention. That's the trap. That's the manipulation. And if you're not careful, you'll start changing course, not because it's right, but because you've been made to feel wrong for prioritizing yourself. Guilt is not the voice of guidance. It's the echo of control. It masquerades as connection, but it's actually a leash. And the people who use it the most often do so under the claim of closeness. But I'm your friend. I'm your parent. After all I've done for you. They use the relationship as a form of currency, as if the years they've known you entitle them to direct your path. But relationships are not contracts of control. Your evolution is not a betrayal. Your boundaries are not acts of rebellion. And their discomfort is not your command. You are not required to sacrifice your future to maintain someone else's sense of relevance. People who rely on guilt to influence you aren't asking for connection. They're demanding submission. They want you to feel bad enough to circle back. Not because they value you, but because they fear losing access. It's not about love, it's about control. They've learned that as long as they can activate your guilt, they don't have to take responsibility for their own emotions. And over time, they train you to anticipate their reaction before you even speak. You begin filtering your truth, your needs, your progress, just to avoid making them uncomfortable. But discomfort is not damage. You are not hurting someone by being honest. You are not abandoning someone by growing beyond the version of you they preferred. Guilt trips often come from people who haven't done the work to grow with you. Instead of expanding themselves, they try to shrink you. Instead of asking how they can support your next level, they make you feel bad for having one. And because they know how much you care, they use that compassion as leverage. That's not love. That's emotional warfare. And the battlefield is your peace of mind. You find yourself explaining decisions that don't need defending. You find yourself saying yes when your soul is screaming no. You find yourself rescheduling your life to avoid confrontation. That's not sacrifice. It's sabotage. And the longer you operate under guilt, the further you drift from your own mission. You were not created to live under someone else's approval meter. Your life is not a group project where everyone gets to vote on your direction. And no matter how convincing their guilt trips sound, they are not mission-critical commands. The only orders that matter are the ones tied to your purpose, your clarity, your conviction. You don't need permission to pursue alignment. You don't owe anyone access just because they once had it. And you certainly don't need to keep explaining yourself to people who only listen to what offends them. The truth is, the more focused you become, the more guilt will show up as interference, especially from those who benefited from your indecision. They'll accuse you of being cold, distant, selfish, not because you are, but because your boundaries force them to confront their own lack of growth. And instead of adjusting to your altitude, they'll try to pull you back to theirs. That's when guilt becomes a tool, a strategy, a last-ditch effort to keep you grounded. But your mission wasn't assigned by them. Your mission wasn't designed to keep everyone else comfortable. Your mission is elevation, not emotional babysitting. And anyone who tries to guilt you for choosing yourself is showing you exactly why they can't fly beside you. Forgiveness is personal. Access is strategic. This is one of the most important distinctions you can make when navigating relationships that challenge your boundaries and your peace. Forgiveness is an internal process, a choice you make for yourself to release the burden of resentment, anger, or pain. It's about freeing your own heart and mind from the weight of past wounds so you can move forward without carrying unnecessary baggage. But forgiveness does not automatically mean that you owe someone a place in your life, a seat at your table, or unrestricted access to your world. Forgiveness is for healing. Access is for safety and trust. Too often people confuse the two. They believe that once they forgive, the door must be thrown wide open, that they must immediately rebuild bridges and invite people back into their lives as if nothing happened. But real growth, real leadership, real self respect demand more nuance. Forgiveness is about releasing the past. Access is about protecting your present and your future. Just because you forgive doesn't mean you return to the same dynamic that hurt you. In fact, the smartest move after forgiveness is to evaluate what kind of access the forgiven party should have moving forward. Access is strategic because it involves boundaries, lines you draw based on behavior, respect and trust earned. It's a conscious decision about who deserves to be close to your energy, your time, your emotions, your goals. You don't owe anyone unlimited access just because they've been forgiven. Forgiveness is your gift to yourself. Access is your guardrail to prevent future harm. And this distinction separates people who thrive from people who get stuck in cycles of repeated disappointment. When you forgive someone who has wronged you, you don't erase the lessons. You don't pretend the past didn't happen. You simply choose not to carry the bitterness that weighs you down. But the lessons must translate into wisdom about who you allow near you. Some people, even after being forgiven, may no longer be healthy to have in your inner circle. Their patterns may not have changed. Their respect for your boundaries may remain limited. And if you let them back in without conditions, you risk reopening wounds. Access must be earned every day, not taken for granted because of a past history or an apology. This is especially true in relationships where emotional sabotage or toxicity has been present. Forgiveness might be your way of releasing yourself from victimhood, but strategic access means you're no longer a punching bag or a safe landing spot for destructive behaviors. It means you protect your peace by holding people accountable for the role they play in your life. It means you watch for repeated patterns, not just one-time offenses. It means you don't settle for empty promises, but look for consistent actions. The biggest mistake is allowing forgiveness to become an excuse for vulnerability without vigilance. Forgiveness without strategic access is like patching a cracked foundation without reinforcing the structure. You may feel relief temporarily, but sooner or later the cracks will widen again. To truly protect yourself, you need to forgive in your heart, but guard your gates with intention. That might mean limited contact, transparent boundaries, or even cutting ties altogether with those who refuse to grow. It doesn't mean you hate or hold grudges. It means you respect yourself enough to know what is safe and sustainable for your well-being. Your energy is your most valuable asset. Not everyone deserves free and over it simply because you've chosen to forgive them. Strategic access protects your focus, your emotional health, and your mission. It helps you prioritize relationships that elevate you rather than deplete you. Forgiveness frees you from being tethered to past pain, but access determines who gets to influence your future. This distinction also empowers you to lead with clarity and confidence. You don't have to keep revisiting old wounds just because you haven't yet decided who belongs in your life moving forward. You can forgive fully while still choosing wisely. You can release resentment while still maintaining boundaries. And you can honor your growth by surrounding yourself with people who reflect the respect and love you've cultivated within yourself. At the end of the day, forgiveness is a gift you give to your own soul. Access is a commitment you make to protect your path. Both are essential. But confusing one for the other is how people get trapped in cycles of pain disguised as loyalty, forgiveness mistaken for weakness, and access granted without regard for consequences. you. When you understand that forgiveness is personal and access is strategic, you reclaim your power to design relationships that serve your highest good, not just your lowest pain.